Do we have any virtual attendees? Okay. All right. Discussion and approval of the March meeting minutes.
We did have a slight amendment to that, which was an addition at the end of the Breck history discussion to summarize basically that whole discussion, which was that BOSEC supports the Keystone Drill on open space,
That was one of my questions.
but not at the Riley and Dredge location, and that other alternatives were discussed.
Thank you.
And I had one comment. My comment about having seen the Social Equity Commission video, it was actually your video.
Okay, can make that change.
OST.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay,
video.
thanks, Bobby.
I have a clarification for this group. The notes, I think, are exactly accurate, but I didn't quite get my monologue right on the other matters topic. And one thing I wanted to convey was that we should understand that staff might not be prepared to answer our questions as we bring them up on short notice, other matters. So just, it's completely to be expected that we might have to table that till the next meeting. And also, I said something about discouraging passionate opinions. I didn't mean that. It's fine to be passionate. It just needs to be succinct and also polite. So sorry to not quite articulate that correctly.
I gotta tell you, I was without passion, I'm nothing.
Anything else? Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Any agenda discussion before we get into it?
Just, we have a standing placeholder for executive session because Kirsten, our town attorney, wants us to make sure we always have proper notice for those. So it's kind of a standing agenda, but I don't have anything for executive session tonight, so we can strike that from the agenda.
Thank you.
Standing item, so you'll see it more frequently.
And I see Kelly Owens has joined us. Thanks, Kelly. Please chime in if you have any comments.
Oh, she will.
Jeffrey said you might be using a burner phone. Okay, I think we're ready for staff summary.
Sure. So we are into that weird spring winter mix season. Still trying to get a lot of visitor use data. We are done with winter grooming, doing a lot of cleanup, including a lot of staff duty-free opportunities at trailheads, and still working on our sign inventory. We have finalized the dates for Friends of Breck coming up for this summer season. So if you all are interested, there is the big area-wide and town cleanup day on May 20th, which is a great opportunity to get out and do some of that cleanup. No doubt there will still be poo out there to be cleaned. So good opportunity there, but we would love for BOSEC members to come to some of these FOBT events this year. And very similar to last year, it's a mix of some kind of land management and stewardship related projects, as well as some cleanup on our National Trails Day on June 3rd, and some B&B maintenance at the end of the season. So hope you can join us for some of those. And we have our summer license agreements kind of starting to line up here as we're nearing the summer season. For just a little refresher, we have a mix of nonprofits and commercial folks who are using the trails or the rec path, and also the river, the steps as we call it, that stretch between the rec center and pretty much the police station that so many people fish through there and on over towards the college. Those are kind of typical groups that we've been working with over the last couple of years. Couple of those are year-long license holders, so they continue to do their tours kind of year-round. Some great nonprofits in there. And Tony's been working on putting those together, and we really haven't seen a big influx in like new interest in those. So we'll keep you posted if we do get some new ones in the door. But we made the decision a couple of years ago to really focus on local organizations, especially for those that have a youth or a stewardship or educational focus. So we're just sort of keeping on with that program, which seems to be working pretty well for us.
Is there like a quota that you have like to not be able to go over, or is it more just based on your criteria that you just mentioned?
We do, we have a group size limitation. It varies a little bit by type of use, but. Tony
Yeah,
can-
so I think primarily we focused on our natural surface trails. And so there is a limit of 5 commercial outfitters that are allowed to have that permit for our natural surface trails. And currently we have 2 right now, Colorado Adventure Guides and Venture Birds.
Mhm.
And they do have a 200 user day as well. along
Okay.
it.
Do
And
you
then-
turn
and then-
down people? Have you had the experience of saying no?
We have, we didn't turn people away, but we actually pulled a license agreement from an old commercial outfitter that was not following the rules. The town system is a little small, and so I think that also limits folks that want to do these tours on mountain bikes. When they kind of realize we have maybe about a 13-mile system just within the town boundary, it kind of limits their expectations of doing these grand tours. So a lot of the folks that we're seeing are doing more like skill building sessions on how to ride, not, beginner kind of education out there.
So these are just within the town limits.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
Tone, like, as far as like groups, like say Keystone Science School, is there any top end number that they're allowed, on any given day?
On the nonprofits, we do not have any daily allotments or limits.
Okay.
And we do have every group report back to us. So we have kind of that inventory at the end of the season that in December, we kind of shared our summer stats on just days of the week, total numbers of people. We haven't felt like anything is, like anyone is abusing the system or doing too much. A lot of folks we're finding are actually doing some stuff weekdays, which really helps spread some of that use out.
For the larger groups, the places that, I guess B&B Trailhead, I mean, is the Sally Barber Trailhead? That's not town, is it? So that doesn't fall under
Not
jurisdiction.
B&B or Sally
But
Brown.
how about Lorraine?
We do not monitor the Lorium, but if a nonprofit was using that, say Keystone Science
Yeah.
School, they would report to
Yeah, so
us.
we'd know.
And so
Yeah,
we know.
Yeah, okay.
Did you say the Venture Birds were 200 people? Or did I miss?
Oh, so Adventure Birds for their season would be a total allowed
Gotcha.
200
Birds.
clients.
Bike clinic, mostly
Oh.
women.
Breck, nobody has to issue any kind of.
Yeah, so within, our system is kind of a web, right?
Venture
of
Birds.
Town and county and US Forest Service. And currently the county does not go through the process of for licensing any contractors. So you are not allowed to go fishing on the Swan or do tour groups. The Forest Service does do permits if you are looking to do commercial outfitters, and that's a whole nother process with the US Forest Service.
Yeah, so it makes it tricky for folks who just want to use our network because it's a little disconnected just within the town limits that way,
No.
but.
And what about the town, camps and stuff, mountain bike camps? And they have to confine their riding or a mountain bike camp with just our trails, or can they use anything?
So they typically focus on our town
Really?
trails.
Okay.
They do venture out on some of the B&B in Summit County
Yeah.
or extenuate BB.
And heads up that our open house is coming up during our regularly scheduled May meeting on Monday, May 22nd. We're going to be moving it to Carter Park this year. Hopefully a big improvement from the mask situation in the gym we had last year. So we're hoping this is a really just great time to be able to interact with folks in a great setting. Starting at 5, going till about 7 o'clock. And kind of similar format to years past where we have some project boards stationed around the area, which we would love for you all, if you're interested in kind of serving as the talking head for that particular topic. We've come up with 7 possible project boards. Would love your feedback if there's anything we're missing, anything you want to take off the list. Depending on that list, we can follow up with everyone on individual talking points so that you have as much information as possible about that topic, and staff can circulate and help anyone out, of course, that evening if you need help. But we thought we would have a project board on the master plan, just having completed that. The two trailhead projects that we've discussed recently, the Browns Gulch and Ryling Dredge ADA trailhead. As far as trail projects, that Sawmill Reservoir Trail and Kiosk. And we do want to look at realigning the Cucumber Gulch Preserve Trail to follow that perimeter coming out of peak 8 instead of peak 7. So we're not bisecting the habitat there. We thought it would be great to have a whole board on trail maintenance. I think you all suggested that, and we have some kind of good visitor stats and counts that we can kind of include in that and just sort of paint the picture of why we need so much maintenance. Having our Friends of Breck volunteer kind of station, so we can hopefully drum up some great volunteers. Cucumber Gulch we've done in the past. We can certainly do that again with just talking a little bit about our wildlife and wetlands and sort of the whole work that we've had ongoing there. And then we'd love to talk about the forest health efforts that are coming up. There's the Peabody Placer project this summer. Sometime we think next winter, our piles on Airport Road are going to burn. So there's stuff to talk about there. And then there's all the land management that we're doing, all the management plans that Sarah's set up for some of those high use areas in Illinois Creek, Blue River Corridor. And we're going to also be adding Sawmill Reservoir to the list this summer. But that's kind of our working list of topics, but would love your feedback if we're missing something or anything needs to come off.
And I don't even know if it's applicable, something for the underserved. How, something to get like kind of like the social equity movement, how to get those that aren't ordinarily inclined to use our open space and trail systems and amenities in that regard. I don't know how you'd phrase it, or I don't know if that even those people those folks would be in that room, but something.
One of the things that we've done in years past, I was hoping to do again, was certainly put ads in the Summit Daily, just inviting the entire community to come. And then we were hoping to take this flyer, which I think we can also do in a Spanish translation, and post at the libraries, at some of the other great locations around. So we've got a few weeks to be able to do that, but that was our hope. We could really spread the word around, and hopefully we can get this to the Social Equity Advisory Commission too, so they can share it within their networks too.
Perfect.
It'd be great to get it to like FERC and BOEC and Cycle Effect.
Yep.
Mountain Dreamers.
Great, like that. Thank you very much.
And what about also, I feel like maybe mountain mentors, because I just feel like they would be like, this is such a easy, free activity to do, not only to go to the open house, but to utilize our trails and open space. I think tapping into that community might be a good idea.
That's a great idea. Yeah, they're doing great things.
Yeah.
For the community, so it'd be good.
Are the naturalists going to be there?
Yes, so they start May 10th. One of them is new, one is returning. So we were hoping also to have them set up an interpretive station as they've done the last year or two, and they'll find some fun topics to talk about, local flora, fauna, but definitely we'll have them set up.
A tour around Carter Park, maybe.
Around Carter Park for sure.
This natural song.
And have a poop pickup at the same time.
Yeah, duty free.
Exactly. But does that all sound palatable as far as topics? And we'll make sure the word is spread widely. Do you all want to take one, or just email us of what interests you and we can send you talking points? You want to divvy those up? And are you still traveling, Bobby?
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
family wedding. I really
Yeah.
can't change the date for it, so.
No worries.
22nd.
Now or over email later.
I guess,
Happy just having it assigned to us too.
Well, if you have strong opinions and
True.
are passionate about something, let's hear it and go for it.
No, Ann's not happy with me. She gave me the bad one.
it's the bad one.
Take,
There are no bad topics.
Right.
he's going to be gone. It seems like you could take off Cucumber Gulch, because if the naturalists are there, the ones that work in, I
Right.
feel like they would be better.
Do that one.
Yeah.
We could tie that into what they're
Yeah.
talking about for sure.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'm trying to think what I know anything about.
I'll do Friends of Breck Trails.
Yeah. Oh,
Well,
wow.
Plan if it's open.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Chris, thank you.
Oh, that's good. That's good and boring.
You
Good
can
work.
print out like 45, 90
Nobody's
page
gonna wanna talk
copies.
to me the whole time.
Yeah, but
Has anybody talked to
You'll be standing there alone.
Fill
like
maintenance, please.
You got it. Yep.
On prom
Ed
night.
projects.
More strategic than I thought.
Sure.
I'll do four as well.
David. Maybe we could do it like community weed poll.
Trail maintenance and visitor use.
You could talk-
Oh,
You have Zara.
Oh,
Can I switch?
I'll be really good at kind of murmuring it to the side and then you just.
Exactly.
No, you can wear your hats. We can show them off.
Keith's logo.
So Nikki, you had the trailhead or trails? I'm sorry.
Oh, you're right. I didn't clarify that. Trailhead projects.
Perfect. Okay.
So which one did you say?
Friends of Breck Trails.
I'll do trail maintenance and visitor use trends.
We've got
He-
Duke.
he can
signed up
have
for
it.
that. He
You
just
can-
jumped in, but if you guys
A
want
lot,
to
I think I'd be a lot better than he would be at that.
probably.
I
Why
think
don't I talk about the trail project?
we should give him duty free. Just let him pick up poop.
All right, I think we're good.
Okay, I think we got that. Thanks so much. We will follow up with you with some talking points and any information that you might need for that. The other thing that is going to happen at our open house is we're just providing a little bit of space for this. I just got word from our CPW aquatic biologist. John Ewert has been the one doing all of the fishing studies up and down the Blue River for a lot of years. Well, I think it's at least since 2011, if not earlier than that. And they've been really studying the health of fish in Dillon Reservoir and also just up the Blue, pretty much from Coin Valley north. And they're a little bit worried about the size of the fish and the numbers of the fish, and thinking that there needs to be an actual full closure on the Blue River between Coin Valley, so through our McCain property north to where the inlet with Dillon Reservoir, from September 1st to December 1st, which is the spawning period. Fish are really, really stressed during that time. So as people are catching them, it just adds to the stress. And they're thinking just sort of indefinitely, if we do that for a while, maybe we can get some of the fish health and fish numbers back up where they should be. This doesn't at all affect the steps, as we call it, in the Blue River, which, as John explained to me, that was a really old river design that we used to use decades ago, which is that pool, riffle, run, and all those vertical drop structures. And that is such a big block basically for fish passage. So we really don't worry about spawning. And also the water levels in that stretch get pretty low as well during spawning period. So this is really from the Coin Valley Road north over to the Dillon Reservoir.
All the way to Farmer's Corner.
Yep. And so they're hoping to gather a lot of public feedback. They are going to do an open house on May 17th. I think it's going to be at either County Commons or at the Senior Center. But they're just trying to get a lot of feedback from the angling community on just, can you guys go along with this? We think it's good for fish health, but certainly want to have that public feedback component.
Is
So
that a
John would
pretty-
love to come and just set up a little station to talk to people about that.
Is that a popular, area stretch for fishermen?
It's been, we've had I think 4 Mile Bridge has been really popular. McCain has been closed, obviously, as we've been restoring it. But, in a few years, when all of that vegetation takes hold there, we presume people are really going to want to fish that stretch. But 4 Mile Bridge is, I think, a pretty popular area too, just north of there. But John would love to come and attend the open house and just gather some more public feedback if that's all good.
Cool.
Right. So we had a little bit of a change in our horses at the McCain. Thanks for all of the feedback that we gathered from BOSAC. And since that time, what our public works folks have done is move it slightly north, that area for the horses onto entirely public works property. I think the sentiment from council was just to do it for a year and really put the onus on, the owner of the horses to find that long-term solution. So they feel like they have good measures in place to be able to catch a lot of the manure on site. There may be some sort of a 3-sided or a little shelter of sorts, a corral in the winter months, but it will be off the open space property.
Great news.
And there's a map in your packet as well if you need to see where that's located.
That's great.
And just a congratulations to all of our incumbents. So Nikki, Chris, and David, welcome back.
Like we never left.
For another 4 years. Exactly. So
4 more years.
yes.
Voted.
Sessions.
But thank you all so much for willing to serve another 4 years with us. We appreciate it. And also our master plan did make it through its second reading. And so as all ordinances go with the town, there's about a 30 to 35 day kind of wait period before that ordinance takes effect. So after it's, I'm trying to think, there's a
Microphone.
microphone. Thanks. On?
There you go.
Hi, Bobby. Sorry, that wait period is to allow for anyone to contest the validity of that ordinance or any of the concerns that happen. So it's an appeal process essentially for it to take effect.
I thought that was what you were supposed to do between the first and second reading, maybe.
And once they made the decision, then it's an appeal process. So
Okay, thanks.
Case with every ordinance and resolution and bill and all that.
not resolutions,
Not
but
resolutions.
ordinances, yes.
Thank you.
So we'll wait just a little bit longer for that to be fully adopted, but really happy that that is moving forward. And the next thing was just an update on the Swan Mountain project, the second scoping notice. We had the first scoping notice that you all reviewed, those of you who were with us in November of 2021, where they initially shared the project, which is kind of multifaceted. They're going to be doing some forest health work, some fish passage work over on the Keystone side, and as well as some trail realignments. And BOSAC's kind of big comments in 2021, it seemed as though the trail realignments were a little bit mountain bike specific. And so I think the Forest Service has taken a lot of that feedback that they heard from us and many others to really ensure that these trails are multi-use. So that is now reflected in the draft environmental analysis and part of the second scoping notice. And we submitted comments today. Hopefully you all had a chance to review that. You can also submit personal comments on that, but it just really is north of Tiger Road. So mostly out of our service area, but the Forest Service, obviously great partners. There's a lot of beetle kill left in that area. And as you know, when the beetle kill kind of occurred, they really prioritized those areas with denser residential areas, denser buildings. So this is still one of those areas that they're still trying to get to and take advantage of doing some great improvements to fish passage and then realign some of those trails in there that have been pretty unsustainable.
You know, and I hope that they that they choose a trail designer that has a history of developing multi-use trails. Just you know, really reiterate that because it's a area that's far enough out that there's just a lot of people that enjoy hiking, dog walking,
Totally,
trail running. You know, not just mountain biking.
for sure. Yep, so those comments are in, and then obviously our BOSAC meetings are up on YouTube. But that is the end of the staff summary unless you all have other things for me.
Question, small detail in the beginning about the winter grooming social media post. I'm admittedly not great at searching through social media, but I couldn't find the post, and I would just, yeah, I would like to get a better sense of what the feedback was, and I don't know, maybe you could point us that direction later or something.
Zara, do you want to, where our open space posts are from and changed up?
trying to do the microphone properly. It's on the open space and trails. We had to kind of restructure everything, and they're still not great as far as pages versus organizations or groups. So we're still working on trying to get everyone over from the original Friends of Breckenridge Trails into the open space and trails. And then I'm trying to share it in every direction that I can. So it shows up as a share onto Summit Trails, Friends of Breck Trails, and then the previous original Friends of Breck page.
So what were you looking for?
So there was a post on Facebook on the Open Space and Trails page
Mhm.
about the winter grooming, and it received a bunch of positive feedback, but I couldn't find the post.
Oh,
So Zara just explained it.
I get you. All right.
I can share it to you tomorrow if you want.
That sounds good. And I bet you I can find it with that information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Town and Breckenridge open space.
Curious, just while we're talking about social media briefly, I noticed the Instagram account is gone that we had at one point.
Wait, how do you find it?
So I was curious what the thought behind Instagram engagement is.
It was entirely managed by Jeff Carlson. And he stopped doing it, and we have yet to pick that up as we've been trying to overhaul Facebook first to get that functioning. But I'm hoping that we can bring Instagram back, because that's such a great go-to place for a lot of organizations these days. and
Yeah, and
people.
we've been really talking about just highlighting, the projects that we're doing, volunteer work, what the crew is working on, the naturalists are doing, and really just trying to highlight the specific day-to-day activities that were just going on. Yep.
Yeah, great.
We'll get it going.
Do you guys feel like you have the bandwidth to take that on?
No,
I'm serious. Like, is that something that, I know you're busy, is that something that you guys can do as staff or need help, or how does that?
It's definitely, when we have our workloads and priorities, I definitely feel like it falls on that bottom end, and we can do a much better job if we had a little bit more time. But I think both Zara and I coordinating, we can do, improvements, but yeah, kind of answer your question.
And then with the naturalists coming back on, they've been working on trying to do some more environmental education materials to put on. So hoping to get some more during the closure, and also kind of using that as an opportunity to talk about why cucumber is closed during that time.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So baby porcupine videos again.
Uh-huh. But yeah, that's like a perfect message that people need to hear. Yeah,
Yeah, but this,
great.
they said there's a bunch of.
My
comments,
one
so
other
3.
comment on the staff summary was, it sounds like, and you were saying duty-free Breck on May 20th would be a good replacement for this evening that didn't pan out, but it also sounds like people are gone. I remember when Carol, when she was on BOSAC, she encouraged us to all go to the same Friends of Breck Trails event. So I just thought, while we're all here, if you guys agreed, it would be fun. And I thought the June 3rd one could be good. I'm gone that May 20th. Sounds like others are too. But the June 3rd, because it's National Trails Day, or the community-wide weed poll, because Dave's in his county capacity working on that. So I'm just throwing it out there. If we all try to be together, because it's fun.
Yeah.
Fostering teamwork. Chris looks
And
really
fun.
excited.
The fun word just breaks
To
me.
all of the weed
Yes.
polls, everybody's always welcome.
You're saying because a lot of people are going to be gone on the 20th.
Yes.
Yeah.
We could also go rogue and pick up poop anyway.
So
Jeffrey.
you think you obviously want to do it after the 20th, because that's when everyone's in town. I'm down to pick up poop any day.
Me too.
I'll do the 20th if I'm here, and then I'll free form.
And then Zara can take a picture of us doing it and put it on our new Instagram.
I'm still having trouble finding this
Our
grooming.
inaugural post will be about poop.
I'm still having trouble finding this thing that you guys referred to about winter grooming.
Oh, it was just a comment, Jeffrey, right at the very top. Staff is currently working.
They're on social media.
Oh, right. Anywho, June 3rd, that's my proposition. National Trails Day seems so appropriate.
Oh, yeah, I'll be there.
Yes.
Sure.
June 3rd.
Duke can't do it.
Food.
That's
No.
okay.
I can do May 20th, so I'll be there
Okay,
on Facebook.
we'll be out there.
We appreciate it.
Any other staff summary comments or questions? Great. Okay. Open space and trails discussion.
Yeah, so officers, we obviously have two officer positions, a chair and a vice chair. And traditionally, ever since 1997, when our program got started, these were 2-year terms. And no formal process other than someone nominates someone for each role and everyone votes on it. I have fielded some discussion over the last couple of days about, well, what if we made them 1-year terms instead of 2-year terms? We're happy to go with whatever works best for you all. If that's an opportunity to have more shared leadership or more shared roles in that. The process for that is we would have to provide notice in a packet about the proposed change. And then BOSAC would need technically 30 days to review it and then vote on it at the next meeting. And we would need a majority vote for it to pass. And then we would have our attorney rewrite those rules basically to reflect the change in officer terms. So we're happy to do with whatever you would like. And if anyone is elected today to chair or vice chair, we can still make those changes. We could certainly bring a change in the terms to the May meeting. So you have a month and then we could vote on it in June, whatever you'd like to do.
How do you guys feel about changing it to 1 year?
I don't mind at all. I mean, I think it is what makes sense for you all. And you know, who wants to facilitate meetings and who wants to be able to step in when the chair is gone. We're happy to go either way.
Great.
Because have you been 1 or 2 years?
This is the end of a 2-year term, but I'll just start by saying I'm in favor of a 1-year term. I don't think it's a big hardship to revisit it annually, and it gives an opportunity to, you know, stuff comes up in people's lives and maybe changes make sense for that reason, or just to mix it up. And also a thought I had specifically toward Bobby and you, Kristen, is it's just awkward for you guys, the way you come on, you've been here for a year, and then if it's a 2-year term, by the time the next opportunity comes up, you would be serve a year and then have to get reappointed or not. You know, it seems like if we did it 1 year, it would make it a better opportunity for everybody on the commission more frequently. So that's my take.
Yeah, and I think that happened when we moved to 4-year terms in 2017, because we used to be on 2-year terms. And at any rate, it kind of flowed a little bit better, but it totally makes sense if you want to revisit that now.
Great. Good to know, Mark. Thanks.
So do we need a motion and all that at this point, or are we gonna do it later?
I think, can we just decide now to put it in the May packet and then we can discuss it in more detail in May,
Or you need it.
or do you need more support than that? No.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of detail in our official rules around those officer terms, just that they're every 2 years. I think our original ones spelled out that April is our usual annual meeting, and that's when we do that. I'm not even sure our most recent rules reflect that. So I think as long as you all are in consensus, we're happy to.
Well, Chris, how do you feel about 1-year terms?
No opposition to it. I mean, I see some of the reasons why we might change. I don't feel compelled for change either. So I'm pretty neutral on all of it. But yeah, if we want to try it, I think there's some reasons to give it a shot.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Me too. I don't really feel strongly either way.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of it.
Me
Nikki?
too.
I am too, and one of the reasons is what you just said. When we come in new, it takes a good bit of time to get to the point where you feel like you could even think about serving in a
Right,
leadership role.
right.
So I think a 1-year term makes a lot of sense.
And Bobby, it's also funny because it's contingent on the timing of when you're appointed. So it was
Right.
affecting to you and Kristen, but not Duke, for example.
Right.
Like the timing of, or not us. It's like anyway, not speaking articulately tonight.
Okay, we have consensus.
So if you are all good to wait, then we will put proposed changes in the May packet. And that was the other thing I did want to ask about our May meeting, because we have our open house. Traditionally, what we've done is take about 20 minutes after the open house and have a really quick meeting. Initially to approve any minutes from this meeting, to capture any immediate feedback that might be on your mind or feedback you've gotten from the public before we lose it and wait another month. And if there is any other pressing business. So if you are all okay with a relatively short meeting, we could do minutes, we could do feedback from the open house, just so we can capture that the day of, and then we could include changes to the officers. So then you'll have a month to review that, really.
Okay.
And then in June, we could take a vote if everyone passes. If you're good with that, I'm sure we could take our officer elections then
Okay.
for 1 year. Does that work? Scott, do you see any issues with, or would you rather have people elected now and change the term? That's the other, knowing that there seems to be fairly good consensus for changing the term. If we wanted to elect folks tonight, just know that then we would change that term to be 1 year and keep to their traditional
keep on the
regular
April
meeting in
timeline.
April.
I
Yeah.
like that. I like that idea.
Okay. So in that case, any nominations?
Well, I'd like to start by saying thanks to Nikki, because she is planning, you can speak for yourself, Nikki, but not seeking re-election as vice chair, and thanks for your service. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Duke. Mine is just a matter of bandwidth with my life and new undertaking. So that is why.
Wait, what? I missed it. I was trying to find it.
Oh, Jeffrey.
You're not going to,
I stepping down from my Kamala Harris position because I don't have the bandwidth, or I won't soon.
so you don't have the bandwidth to do Duke's job either? I mean,
No,
chair either?
not at the moment, but I'll be interested in a year or two.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right. I had a whole
Okay.
speech prepared.
I'd like to nominate Duke Barlow for chair and David Rossi for vice chair, please.
I'll second that.
I would like to nominate Chris Tennell for vice chair and Duke for chair.
I'd also like to throw out the suggestion of Duke possibly being vice chair if he wants to step down from his chair role and wants to do less.
This is the most.
Idea was
polite
is to do
election.
this now.
Democracy at its best.
You want to do it? What's the deal?
I appreciate that it's a 1 year term. I'm happy to do either role, honestly. Like, I'm happy to serve as vice chair and let somebody else take the reins. That's fine. If you guys all prefer that I stay as chair, I'm happy to do that. I know that that's super neutral, but that's how I really feel. I think it makes sense, especially with Nikki stepping down, for me to be in one of the roles, and I would support that. But the particular one, I don't feel strongly about.
Do you feel strongly about being the chairman there, Rossi, and then Duke being vice chair? Because I'd make that in a motion.
Well, that's a whole other ball of wax there. I would prefer, my preference was what I nominated. I think Chris would make an excellent vice chair. I'm happy to do it.
He's
but-
kind of surly.
But
I'm gonna stay out of this then.
But I
Even
think
Duke
Duke has
precious
served us really well as chair, and I would be thrilled if he's willing to stay in that position.
Okay, I nominate Duke for chair and Dave Rossi for vice chair, just to punish him.
Who are you punishing?
Duke's chair. So we need to determine a vice chair between Chris and David.
Do you want to take a vote from everyone, just so we can capture this correctly in our minutes? And so is that what I'm hearing is, let's start first with the chair position for Duke.
Right now. Yes, I vote for Duke for chair, Dave Rossi for vice chair.
Duke for chair, Rossi for vice chair. I thought, aren't we just doing Duke right now?
Mhm.
Yeah, let's do
Duke for
Duke.
chair.
Duke for
Aye.
chair. Okay.
Except if elected.
Duke for chair.
Duke for chair.
I don't know.
Vice chair.
All right.
Do we need to hear from both candidates or anything?
Can you bring
Is there
seltzer waters?
swag or anything?
He's the man.
Yeah, Chris, can we hear a little more about your level of interest for it? I'm just trying to determine who seems,
I mean, vice chairs just support the chair when they're not here. So I mean, it doesn't have a lot of lift to it, but
so you say.
not that you haven't been doing anything for the last 4
Nikki's
years.
overwhelmed, she's stepping down, so.
It's more than you might think.
No, if I was chosen, I'd do it, but I like Dave.
It's good to be liked, but
I
that's the
nominate
reason
Dave.
The reason I nominated you is because I think you approach this really thoughtfully, and not only do I not like you, I think just kidding. Now I think you'd be great, and if I'm happy to do it, but if you have the bandwidth and interest in doing it, I would much rather defer to you. That would be my preference.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I'd like to go into battle with you guys. Cool. Yeah, I'll switch my considerable political might behind Chris.
All right, can we nominate Tennell for vice chair?
I nominate Tennell for vice chair, Chris Tennell for vice chair.
Second,
And we vote?
boy, this.
Dave Rossi.
Jeffrey?
Dave, I mean, Chris Allen.
Chris Tennell.
Chris Tunnel.
Chris Tunnel.
Dave, Kristen.
Okay. Whatever.
Well, that was the most heated
So-
vice
we're so
president election
magnanimous.
I've ever been part of.
Vice chair election, that was fun. Let's do another.
See if anybody.
Potentially do this every year.
Right now, exactly.
Yeah, that sounds like a really sad.
8 minutes.
Much appreciated. That's great. And we will put in the packet for next month, just potential changes to the terms.
Trails work plan and signage work plan.
Yeah, so our trails work plan and signage work plan are pretty meaty topics. And in chatting with Duke and Nikki and trying to figure out how we sort of take some bite-sized pieces of this as our next steps, we thought first it's good to just reconfirm that the idea behind these work plans is that they support our master plan goals and then help flow into our annual work plans. So we just want to make sure that that still resonates with all of you. I'm seeing some head nodding, just making sure that this is kind of how that's nested. We have our master plan, our work plans, and then we can flow into the annual work plan. With
We
the
talk about the naming of that for just a second.
Mhm.
Well, signage is misspelled in the middle
Oh,
one there,
geez.
but it seems strange to me to have a master plan and then two different things at different levels that are work plans.
We got the terminology from council for the trails and signage work plans, and that is what is worded in the master plan. And our annual work plan has always been the annual work plan. Happy to change any terminology. I think it's just really that concept of how these are kind of nested within each other and how that some of that information flows from one plan into the next.
I thought the trails and signage was supposed to be like an appendix to the master plan. No, they're not tied.
They're I would say nested within it. They are kind of the implementation measures of the master plan. And the master plan does talk about the need to develop a trails work plan and a signage work plan, because that's the direction that council gave us before we finalized that master plan. So it's really, how do we implement the master plan? We have all these 4 strategic goals, but how do we implement them? And that's done in a work plan, with the idea being, with a work plan, we can change, we can update them, they're living documents. If it's an appendix, that needs to go through that whole adoption process, and it is a static document. That's what lives on record. But with a work plan, we can change priorities, we can move things on and off the list, we can check them off as we complete things. So it's a much more kind of dynamic document for us to be able to work from, to implement. Do folks kind of agree with that? You
Yes,
see a
I
different
agree with
use of
that.
it? Okay, okay. Because we thought, we wanted to just sort of reiterate that, that's how these documents flow together. But then in chatting with staff and in chatting with Duke and Nikki, there's a lot of big topics that we as staff would really like some direction on. And there are things that we think should be developed and brainstormed and talked about a little bit further. And it might make sense to take one or two of these at future meetings so that we have the time and the space to really dive into them. Because otherwise, I think it feels really overwhelming all at once,
Agreed.
because these are big topics and they kind of
Agreed.
deserve, good discussion and good brainstorming. And so we came up with an initial list, which we would love some feedback, like what are we missing? What should be taken off? But just to walk you through, I guess, a couple of these that we talked about during the master plan process was the idea of trail loops. And is that something we should explore further? That was an idea of dispersing people kind of where we want them to go and maybe change those up every year so that areas aren't getting hammered so hard with people, and maybe doing some signage and orientation around that. Parking, we know is a big topic. And there's summer parking, there's winter parking. Just the idea of creating a parking strategy and what's our overall philosophy on that, I think is gonna take some time and energy to think through. Zara came up with this term, which I like because I think the county was using transit to trails. We thought our free ride to forest would make sense. But the idea of like, can we flush out maybe some details on how we get people out of their cars and taking public transit, and then knowing which trails they can access from some of our transit stops. That might be something that we can talk about in further detail, because right now there's not really any wayfinding. If you were to get off at a transit stop, if you happen to know where the trails are, or you pull up a map, great, but otherwise it's not intuitive for a lot of folks.
And I don't, on this one, I don't know if that has to be specified, but I'd like someday to figure out how to get public transportation to Gold Run Nordic. So I don't know.
Me both, yeah.
I don't know if you put that in, in the,
Mhm.
in this description, but whatever.
I like it. That's a great thing we've talked about internally for many years. Just ticking off the list, and we can obviously talk about any of these that you'd like to. The trailhead infrastructure, of just all those amenities and services, like what's our philosophy around that? When do we put out trash bins? When do we, put up more poo stations? What else are we missing? Do we ever talk about bathrooms or portalettes? I think having some parameters around that would be good to discuss. That whole concept of ambassadors or rangers and this whole range of education to enforcement is another big area that would be great to get some direction, and maybe that's a much more longer term direction, because I don't think anyone's ready to move to rangers tomorrow, but 10 years down the road, is that where we want to go? I don't know. So it'd be great to get some feedback on that. The concept of capacity came up a lot in our discussions recently, and just, I think that's sort of worth a deep dive of like, how do we define it? Like, how do we know it? Is it our trail counts? How do we define capacity? Because we talk a lot about it, but I think we just need to kind of define that and know what to look for. And then I think because people really do have all of their wish list items of like, I really want to see a trail here. We really need to have a trail here. That's something that I would love to have in an appendix, like all of those sort of very specific connections that people have in mind that, may or may not require some trail easements, or maybe we already own the land or require some partnership efforts. But I think that would be good to talk about. And Zara did prepare an online map, which if you haven't explored, it's kind of everything from our transit stops. We've been working on putting those in there, and our management zones, where all of our trails are. A lot of good information. So consider that just a really good interactive resource for you. But
Is that the one that's the link
yep,
here? and that?
yep.
Zara, are you going to put any street or trail names or anything on that one? Because I didn't see that information.
I think if you turn on the trail layer, it should have the labels. It's just off because it makes everything very busy. But it is a reference to be able to see where the conceptual trails are.
There's no place that would drop in the trail names.
If you
or
hit
s-
the- if you hit the
major
trail, it
street
does.
names. That does it?
If you click it, it should give you some more information. And then I think I have the road ones turned off just as a reference for visual, but I can turn those on.
Sure, it's right. Like hard look, fine.
Mhm.
I'll say hard look.
Would offer to do a tutorial at any time. I'm sure if Sarah wouldn't mind doing that, just to walk you through some of that stuff. But it's a really good reference tool.
Well, I like the idea of breaking it down.
Yeah, okay.
Tutorial.
I think I think it would be a good idea to take these in chunks. I think these are the right ones. I think kind of to combine the trails appendix and Jeffrey's comment, just having some sort of like, I don't think this is like its own topic, but maybe some sort of portion of the work plan or, the work that you're recording throughout the year, like a wish list kind of thing.
Yep.
Of being like, yes, this is not going to make it into our plan. We're not going to do this by December, but a lot of people have talked about this trail connection, or a lot of people have talked about a bus to Gold Run and I don't know. I just think there's probably a lot of other things that could go on that list. So just maybe
Okay.
something that we can actually keep track of those wish list items, I think, but the trails appendix is a great start. I think that's almost it.
Okay.
I do think we should talk about both. I think both trail loops and parking are probably my two most
Okay.
like important or biggest ones. I think it's the Lorium trailhead conversation between us and with council, I think really raised a good point that we need to have some more specific guardrails or criteria about what we mean when we say we need a new parking lot. Is it that we need to improve on a parking lot? When is it improve versus expand? Is it if you build it, they will come? Do we always believe that in every situation? Are we willing to make that sacrifice and make it bigger and then see what happens to our trails? So I think that just having some like looser criteria than our actual master plan has, but maybe just some guardrails or considerations for parking, I think would help guide us. And it might not even be something that needs to be blessed by council, but I think it would be something that they would be interested in seeing. Like this is kind of the direction we're going. Do you, feel the same way? Because I know they feel strongly. With trail loops, I think the changing them is really more like I think that's a really interesting idea. I also wonder how big of a lift that would be for staff to change it every year. So I would defer to you guys on like, if we'd have to change any signage or change any social media or change anything on our maps, like how laborious that is. I also think of trail loops as important just as wayfinding tools, like just thinking about B&B area and extenuate where people who aren't familiar have to get off their bike or stop for directions every half mile, which is fine for us because we know where we are, but a lot of people don't. So just
And
even
then-
like a color coded
And
thing
then
or
the
something.
concept of changing loops, is that physically changing the ground?
No, it would be, okay, this summer, we're gonna highlight, let's say, a 20-mile mountain bike and a 5-mile hiking loop. And next summer, we wanna,
So it's just highlighting rather
Yep.
than changing. It's
Like
changing
what we tell the
focus.
visitor center or something.
yeah, exactly. And we do a fair amount of that anyway, and we have been over the years with the Welcome
Oh,
Center
that's what I'm
because
wondering
they're
about,
always
but-
looking for ideas and we always want to move people around. But I think the idea of that wayfinding piece is really important too. So how do we sort of brand that so people can know how to follow that loop?
I think on the other topics, we may have missed, it seemed like it fell through the cracks with our master plan process, but back to social media and community engagement, whether that's specifically social media or even looping in things like the muddy meter or CAIC signage. So I know there's a lot of overlap here, but I revisited the master plan today and there really is nothing about social media, which makes sense because that is more prescriptive, I think, but I don't know if this is the proper place for it, but I think we need to focus on how we engage the community, particularly when our trails are muddy or in different states and we need to inform the public. So
I think, yeah, that whole concept of communication, community engagement, messaging is a great topic to dive into.
Yeah, messaging is a good.
I just second that. I think it would be such a great resource for the community to know to check a certain place every day, to just like really quickly be like, is a trail closed? Is this trail too muddy? It's June. We're all like wondering what trails are going to be open, like having that be a consistent place to look for those kinds of things, I think would be so helpful. Or like tree down or something like that.
We have,
Kinda
but you guys
have
have been updating on the town site over
We have, but we're
during that
gonna,
brief period of time where there's muddy,
Yeah.
not muddy, early season.
and we're
stuff.
gonna overhaul it hopefully to make it even more just user friendly and more noticeable from a landing page, that sort of thing, make it a little more prominent.
Are we doing the Breck Epic this year?
Well,
Presume it's happening as far as I
Well,
know.
in that case, but I would love to have the town take the lead on, you know, the various legs, stages of the event to let people know where it's going to be so they can avoid that area, you know, knowing that that's going to be impacted. And,
Okay.
you know, I always go into the Breck Epic Facebook page, but it'd be nice if like Kirsten said, when they're checking in to see what's, you know, muddy later on in the summer, what is going to be impacted.
Yeah.
So,
No,
Even
that's-
Jeffrey, the trail races too,
Mhm.
the running and bike
Yeah.
race, sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
And forest health too, which may interrupt a little
Yep.
bit too. So I like that. Yeah.
We have general information about what's an easy trail for somebody who's not acclimated or what's really difficult, and please stay away if you're not.
You know,
acclimated.
we've done the traditional difficulty rating on our trails, but I think one of the things that we've been talking about doing with trail loops is what a lot of other systems use, which is trying to provide at a usual walking pace, at a usual biking pace, it'll take you this time. So trying to provide a little bit more information. Our consultants who did a lot of our branding efforts, Civic Brand, they've also been just geeking out over all of the latest trail apps, which are showing even some of these topographic changes. So you can kind of get a sense of what you're in for in some of these rides. So we're trying to see if there's anything like that that we could work into our system too. But I think we're always looking for ways to improve that messaging for folks.
I like
so
that
they-
trail profile stuff because
Yeah.
it's small enough
Yep.
where you could put it on the existing posts and you could see just,
Totally.
you know, how that, if you're looking at something that's
Mhm.
steep incline or it's mellow or
Mhm.
whatever.
You know what I worry about, and I think this is not what David is saying, but I worry about being too specific because it could come back to haunt us here. So you said this trail was easy and, you know, my Aunt Nell had a stroke. You know what I mean? So I just think sometimes, you know, that can come back because, you know, what we think is easy living up here, someone from sea level coming up here might not be. But with Dave's suggestion with the actual profile, you know, it's just a little bit more vague and it puts the onus on the user to decide if he wants to take that particular route.
For sure. It's a great point. And we're also trying to find ways to integrate some of the more popular trail-based apps into our website. So the All Trails, the Mountain Bike Project,
Mhm.
and Cotrex, which is Colorado's one, which still needs probably a little bit of work, but trying to figure out how we can integrate that too, just to provide more information and options for people.
To the talking points that are listed here, particularly as far as our core tenants, I like A, B, and D. And I think that is kind of the meat of the matter, what we really need to talk about. I like the ideas in C and E, and I think those are kind of tools that we'll be able to use to support the A, B, and D. And then I really like the idea of defining capacity and maybe trying to understand if there's something else we need to define even before we jump into this and be like, okay, what are the measurables that we're talking about so that when we start these discussions, we have something to kind of lean back into. But yeah, how do you quantify it?
Mhm.
But I love the list. I think we just can refine it down a little bit further, but
On the defining capacity, I was thinking of Paul Semmer said that the Forest Service had some metric or tool to trail density. I was very curious if we could see that or if that's worth utilizing.
Yeah, I think we could probably calculate a lot of that just based on either management zone. That would be a really useful tool, I think, to look at. But we can definitely look for some ways to.
And I know it's
see
hard to
that.
pull all the data we want out of the usage, but I think where we have the opportunity to rely on data as opposed to, just opinion or kind of our personal feelings on the open space plan, I think we'll come up with better work plans because of that. So.
Great, thanks.
So this could take months and months.
It could, so I think I'd want to just preface it by we're not under any like specific timelines. I think it's more important to do it right than to rush it. So in that sense,
As long as that's okay.
Mhm.
I think
I think a
that's the
robust discussion is important.
beauty of it is that, we can take our time. So,
Yeah.
So does council not have some kind of expectation of when this part is going to be done?
No, I think council's very comfortable with, we did the second reading of the master plan. And I think kind of confident with the expertise at this table and with public input that we can come up with something, at a rate that it makes, it's good, but it's not hurried. So, yeah, I think we're pretty cool. I think council probably, someone will have some input, particularly someone that sits right in the middle where Duke is. He's very opinionated.
You have any thoughts, David?
No, I think this is great.
thanks.
These all look like really good things to ask at our open house, Chris Tunnel, at the kiosk for the master plan.
If I had anybody visit, I would ask of them these questions.
Go talk to Chris if you like trail loops.
We were talking about getting a
Candy or
cake
something.
to celebrate the master plan signing and approval. So maybe we could put the cake,
Keg.
both. Um,
Cake.
but we were, we also really want to engage the public at this and trying to find ways that we can get their input, whether that's through post-it notes at these project boards or comment cards they can just put in a basket and leave. But I think that's a big point that at our open house too, is really trying to gather as much input as we can from the public on any of these projects or anything that we can talk about.
Can we get something into like the senior center's monthly newsletter? A lot of the hikers out here are members of the senior center.
I know we were going to drop off a flyer, but if there's a way to get it, I'm not sure the timing of your newsletters, but happy to put anything in there.
Because there are several hiking groups
Right.
that are organized by the senior center.
Yep, that was on our list of flyer drop-offs.
I'll see what, I think if we got it actually in the newsletter too, would
Okay.
be a good thing. I'll try and find out about who you contact and what the deadline is.
Yeah, thank you.
I like this list too. And I like Nikki's addition of messaging. And I think it's implied, but it's critical that when we do these deep dives that that staff participates in these discussions. You guys are the experts, and we can provide recommendations and represent the community, but you guys know the best practices and the feasibility better than we do. So that's critical. And on that note, capacity is one where I feel like on that spectrum, that's the one that strikes me as like, I really think staff might need to lead that in terms of like, here are some ways that we can look at some metrics, some actual tangible stuff we can look at to define capacity instead of anecdotes, because I'm afraid that's what we all fall back on, and that's not, we're looking for something more objective.
With the capacity, I echo what Duke said and would love to hear when we talk about this from staff, like what your greatest concerns are right now about, obviously we have general concerns that more and more people are using our trails and spaces, but like, are there specific instances like where you see trails deteriorating faster than you would have thought or something like that? I think those kinds of things would be really helpful to bring to that conversation.
Okay, perfect.
And maybe that's something every time we're out on a trail, we should be taking note of and providing feedback.
Mhm.
Like there were nobody after the first half mile, or this section of this trail was wrecked because there was so many footprints or bike paths, tracks, or whatever. And I think
Yeah.
we could be on the lookout every time we're out.
Especially that damage piece, because we want to know about it. We're out there trying to do as much trail maintenance as we can, but when you notice stuff that helps us prioritize, so.
People not respecting the muddy meter.
Do you know, I just thought of with capacity metrics, Colorado 14ers Initiative uses grades for their trail assessment. And I was curious if you knew how they grade them.
Oof, it's been a while since I dove into that. I can bring it to the discussion whenever we have this on capacity and look into that.
Yeah, I could even call them. It's just an interesting,
Yeah.
because I think you can think of capacity as people you encounter, but also, yeah, damage, wildlife, like there's so many considerations that we have to make sure we're on the same page with what we're even talking about with capacity. So
Great point. Yeah.
Hey, Nikki, I'm on 14ers.com and I've got all the classes up of how they look at that. So the way they're doing it is much more technical. So it goes from hiking on a trail to more difficult with wayfinding, scrambling, unroped climbing, climbing, and technical climbing.
oh, this was actually the conditions of the trails. So they
Gotcha.
do an
Okay.
annual report where everything gets a grade from an A to I think an F,
Okay.
and measuring conditions and ability to
Gotcha.
sustain and so forth. I'm just not sure what they use to formulate those grades.
Yeah, I think we can check that. out too. And if this list with the addition of kind of that messaging piece sounds good, is there, knowing that May is our open house, June, is there one you want to kick off discussing in particular?
Do we think we can do one in May, or is that asking too much for our
I-
brief meeting?
I
You think it's too
I
much?
think it's a lot. Yeah,
Okay.
after an
think-
open house.
Would we do trails and then signage, or try to do them in tandem? So picking one from each list?
We could, for sure. I think when we get to signage,
for
it's
a
a little
camp.
more nebulous for me. So really looking for your direction on where we want to go with this. But we can certainly
We
have
can do
the
like this
signage discussion before we figure out what we tackle next too, if that's helpful.
Suggestions on where to start? Which topic for our June meeting?
Don't look at me, I'm just a pretty face.
How about loops?
Yeah, let's start at A.
Potentially implement them, and it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like too big a piece to
I like
bite off.
Yeah, and with the loops, Duke, if we wanted to change them every year, it wouldn't be an overload on a staff burden to take that on. And we've also, like Ann was saying, have connections with the app platforms that would want to promote these loops as well, and also the Welcome Center that we could get them out to.
I have strong feelings on loops, so yeah, I'd love to talk about that.
Discussion of loops not include more than just the emphasis of a particular loop, or is it creating more loops?
Well, I think what we are very much hoping is that the big picture policy level from BOSAC on the idea of trail loops. I mean, I think staff, we can chase down a lot of the details and get into the weeds on these things, but what we're hoping is you can give us the overarching direction of like, yeah, this is what we want to see or not see with trail loops. And then we can chase.
Yeah, I think we'll find that there's pros and cons, and there's kind of results of loops and how it translates into other trails. So, yeah, I'd love to talk about that.
Okay.
That'd be my favorite.
In other systems that you guys have visited with, have you ever seen like an annualized loop recommendation? I think that's kind of cool. Like be like, oh, our 2023 loop is X, and our 2023 hiking loop is this. And then have the opportunity to change it around a little bit, but
That was a little bit of the idea behind Cotrax, the state of Colorado, when they put together this platform, was that people would come up with some recommendations for folks, knowing that people from Colorado travel all over Colorado to visit trails. So that was the idea, was that land managers could change up those loops and like, this is what we want to highlight now and change that at least on an annual basis, if not.
it's really interesting. I'd never thought about it like that.
Great. June loops. Loops, all right.
Right.
There we go.
And then we'll cover berms and jumps and tabletops later
Features.
on in the summer.
Specifically where we can add more.
Yes, exactly.
And hiking trails.
Yeah,
What
for
do you
the,
think about hiking trails?
well, and also for the wheelchair accessible, I think those people would like to get a little air. So, yeah.
So I think what is a a more difficult topic for us and just trying to figure out kind of where we go with it is the signage work plan. And the way that staff have been thinking about it is we have these kind of 4 categories or buckets of signs. We have regulatory signs, we have wayfinding signs, we have some etiquette signs, and then we have a little bit of interpretive signage, Cucumber Gulch and what Breck history has out across our network. And so thinking about those, are there any that we're missing? Are those kind of our big four buckets that we see as types of sign? It helps us to try and think about what kind of signs we're dealing with across our network.
No, I think that covers it.
Yeah, this looks right.
Yeah,
What's the arrow meant to be at the bottom of that?
it's just a
decorative?
fun decorative
Okay.
chart thing that I found in Word. Trying to provide some color in a colorless packet, but nothing
Well
more.
done, Ann.
Thanks. But if we can agree on at least those 4 different types of signs that we have, we really want to understand kind of on a policy level, what all you would like to dive into. You know, we've discussed a little bit about accessibility and how do we make our signs a little more accessible to multiple users. Is that moving to a lot of the universal signage? We have some out there, but there's a whole wealth of universal signs that people see across networks all over the country. That sign density, that topic has come up a little bit, and especially within management zones, like what's kind of the right feel for that in the front country, in the mid country, the back country. We know we've gotten some feedback from council on the kiosks and really trying to improve those. Certainly the "You Are Here" signs, not including our entire network, but a little bit more zoomed into where particularly you are at that kiosk, and just opportunities to better utilize those kiosks to provide good information. And maybe it's changing it out summer, winter, maybe it's providing room for some of the CPW wildlife signs, for other conditions, for etiquette. I mean, I think it is worth a good discussion on what we want our kiosks to do and can we do a better job with those.
As far as signs, do we have in-house the expert? I mean, I totally agree, regulatory, wayfinding, etiquette, interpretive, but you know, it's kind of like a subliminal feng shui it seems that sign people come up with to make the signs more noticeable, or but not obtrusive.
Yeah.
I mean, do we have that in-house to give us advice on that?
We have some info, but the letter D that we have on here are the best practices. And I think that is something that is worth further compiling. There have been a lot of open space organizations across the state that have kind of embarked on this recently, of trying to figure out what are the best practices and what do we want to utilize on our systems. I can share with you what Pitkin County did for their signage plan. They worked with some local consultants. I feel like it's really kind of technical, like these are the materials, this is the dimensions of like even the kiosks and that sort of thing. I'll email it out to you all to take a look at. Gary said it was fine to share. But it really comes down to a lot of those best practices, I think.
Yeah.
Have y'all done some research on like what when I just Googled that, I came up with a lot of hits on best practices. And have y'all narrowed it down to any that you think would work for us or not?
We have a lot of ideas, but I think what we're looking from you all is really that sort of direction that we want to go. Because the other thing on here is that I know some people felt really strongly in hiring a consultant or a designer, and we really want to understand what all you feel that we need. A consultant could certainly compile all those best practices for us and do the groundwork of reaching out to other organizations. And this is what works. This is what, you know, Jeffco and Boulder County and others work. The National Park Service has a whole inventory of kind of the national universal icons, that sort of thing. A consultant could pull all of that together for us if we wanted to. A designer is an entirely different function, I think, of actually designing signs. So that's why we put this on here, because we're really looking for direction, because we heard a little bit of feedback about both, I think, at previous meetings. So it's really where you want to take this.
You know, one of the things that I liked about the beginning of the master plan process was that you took some time, you guys, I
Mhm.
don't know, I'm looking at you, but could have been a bunch of you guys on staff gave us a lot to look at and compare with other
Yep.
programs. And that was very helpful to me. And I feel like, I don't know how the rest of you guys feel, but we could kind of see this is what we like, this is what
Mhm.
we don't like, and get kind of a good feeling so we weren't reinventing the wheel. And if that's possible, and if
Yeah.
that requires a consultant to do that, I think the thing that's going to be a challenge for us is to try to, identify successful programs like Pitkin County, but, I'm sure we could look at a few others. Maybe Boulder has a good multi-use for hiking, and so we're not leaving anybody out. And we can get an idea of how they approach the universal signs, how they approach etiquette, and how they approach their brand. Because I think that's where, at least for me, I'm passionate about just us identifying our system a little bit better, and in a way that is in collaboration with the county and the Forest Service, where we jointly manage some of the stuff in the Golden Horseshoe. And then I feel like that would give us a foundation to at least have a work plan and be able to build a statement of work for a designer, for an RFP. So we could, they would know what they're getting into, because otherwise I think we're all kind of shooting in the dark, like design us some really cool signs. And we kind of need a little bit more to give to them, I don't know. I feel like that would be more helpful for whomever tackles this project on a creative standpoint. But I think it's a bandwidth question for you guys on whether or not you can compile those things, like 3 to 5 different programs or something that tackles some of those things. And then we kind of get a sense of the direction from us, that what we want versus, and then let a designer tackle how to say it. We know what we want to convey. A designer can help us do the work of translating that into easy to read, easy to see, branded, consistent, effective. The reason that I was hot on bringing somebody in who does kind of understand this, and it might be that a program like Pitkin or somebody that we do have a conversation with their program managers, they may have the team that did that, and we can reach out to them. And that would, if we like somebody, it'd be nice to just say, who was it?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
put them in the hopper with us. Because I think we're going to have a lot of decisions to do up here about just a philosophical, the questions that you ask on this about, the density of the signs and where they go, and what does a kiosk serve, and how far out on a trail do we go, and reduce, what those things might be that we all start to think about. But I feel like we need to see something to react to.
So would that help then? If we can, as staff, I know we have a couple of examples. I don't know if we're in the 3 to 5. I can probably come up with 3 fairly easily and email them all to you. So you have at least kind of that baseline of what other folks have done. And if you want to tackle trail loops in June, maybe we can also tackle a little bit further direction after looking at some of these plans.
Best practices.
Yeah.
How far along is Summit County on that?
I don't believe that Summit County, it looks like Catherine just left. They're not,
She knew that question was coming.
as far as I understand, they're not interested in revisiting their signs.
Okay, but does what they have, is what they have something that we want to emulate or not?
Well, what they have is pretty much what we have. I mean, it's a pretty consistent signage look and feel, just with different logos across the entire county. So, I mean, it's something to keep in mind. If we were to come up with something wildly different, we would want to get that buy-in. And I think that was Pitkin County's greatest advice, because they're in a very similar situation where they have overlap with the city of Aspen. They've got Snowmass, they've got all of these, and then the Forest Service as well. And so that was their challenge also in coming up with this, but they had buy-in from these other organizations. And so it wasn't something wildly different, but it was something that complemented the other organizations in that area.
And when that buy-in happened, was it that does anyone remember? I don't remember if we asked them this specifically, but like, did they share the budget in terms of like making new signs? Did they all like agree on the same design and like
I
vision?
didn't get that. It was strictly for Pitkin County. It was Pitkin County's plan for themselves,
Yeah.
but they tried to do it in a way that would complement the other areas that they overlap and work in.
Okay.
And so it's my understanding, none of the other organizations changed necessarily, but what they came up with was a good complement to
Gotcha.
what's out there. But Catherine is here, and Catherine, there was a question to put you on the spot, if Summit County at all is wanting to revisit signs on trails or kiosks.
Good question. It's not on our work program right now, but I also wouldn't say we're not willing to do it. I think there's certainly room for improvement. I think we're totally on board with consistency in our messaging and just helping people get around and navigate as best as they can. And if that means coming up with some more uniform standards, I can't imagine why we wouldn't consider that. I think it falls right in line with, the partnership we've had with the town for a long time and trying to serve the public as best as we can. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Catherine. The door's open.
So it's
Sounds
going to be loops and signage best practices next time?
Yeah, I
Not-
think
not in May,
some,
but in June.
in June, yeah.
I
That
think
is-
on
Go ahead.
just other topics for signage, the integration or utilization of the QR code and wayfinding. One idea I had was to put Sarah on the spot. I think it would be helpful to me at least, and maybe helpful to others, to better understand what options we have with QR codes and like understanding the integration of GIS with what can we do with it, and like understanding that better from you, I think, or whomever on staff would personally, I think that'd be very helpful.
Well, I think your husband's given me most of the ideas of what we can do with QR codes. Because I've been batting some ideas with him. So we definitely have some options. There's some new technologies that we can use that kind of utilize some app qualities, but kind of create landing pages. So he and I have been talking about experience builders, and I've done a couple of trainings on it, but it could be like a place where people can land and either see things like a little built-in app that actually shows them where they are without having to use proprietary software, and also have links to other places. But also recognizing that the QR code doesn't reach everybody. So how can we use that in conjunction with other tools? That way we're reaching and in as inclusive as possible.
Yeah. I mean, even you talking more at a later meeting, like just seeing.
Oh,
more-
yeah.
And also the integration of, we keep talking about utilizing other trail apps, but I think it'd help to see what that really means and what that would look like.
Yeah, we could, I mean, if that's another topic people want to look at, we can kind of use some of those things. And more programs and websites are trying to have embedded with All Trails and Mountain Bike Project. And we talked about kind of where I'm hearing a place where everybody can find things, instead of us creating a whole bunch of what we can already integrate into. That kind of takes down on staff capacity, and it's a one-stop shop for everything. So, some people have an app of choice. So maybe that's something we can look at, of how can we link that to allow you to figure out, yes, you are here, but here, this is going to bring you to that information into the landing page you prefer.
Yeah.
Some ideas.
Oh, great. I'd love to hear more. So.
Any other ideas? It's a little bit of a different animal tackling signage, I think, from our trails work plan.
I'm curious how staff feels about where and when to pursue a consultant, and then to some of Dave's points, potentially a designer down the road. Like, I know council has expressed support for the idea, but like, how do you guys feel? When would they slot into the sequence best if we were to go that route? Like, how much do you guys think that you could take on internally versus wanting outside help.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're happy to take that initial stab at trying to gather as much information and plans that exist that we're aware of out there to provide for you for some good baseline. Off the top of my head, I think that's probably the result of our next discussion. If I think BOSAC is all over the place on ideas and there's not general consensus, that's where I think a consultant is really helpful to bring in, to really bring in all these different viewpoints and come to a place that everyone can find consensus. So I think it depends a little bit on just what the palette of everyone is for.
Has
what
Chris
they see.
Tennell started charging for his facilitation services?
We haven't discussed it yet.
It's gonna be high. Just to comment on this too, the other thing I would love to start the conversation with is understanding what we really feel is not working with our current signage. I mean, we talked about this at a couple different levels, but a lot of the citations of what's not working with our signage is usually the overlap between town, county, Forest Service. And we know that that's not anything that we can fix, right? So it's like, what is the true issues? And it's not also like we have a lot of people that go lost on our trail system. So it's, as far as the wayfinding, we don't have anything that's intrinsically broken. So I guess all I'm looking for is to make sure, again, it's a forward-looking working plan. So making sure that we're not rushing into a fix that we may or may not need just for a fix, and understanding what is broken, if anything. So
On that note, I feel like I've heard council members mention this, but it could be great to get some more specific feedback from them. I've just heard like they were interested in the trails plan, they're interested in signage. It'd be great to get some more specifics before we have that conversation.
Yeah.
So there's some homework.
And STEP did start just like a basic photo sign inventory of what we have existing on our system, where we could kind of go through what we have and like, does
Yeah.
this actually work anymore? How can we improve this messaging? And
Yeah.
just kind of take a look at
That'd be helpful.
out there.
Could we get the list, if we're going to be looking at specific trails, the signage on specific trails, could we get that list in advance?
The list of all the
The trails that we might be discussing? Are we gonna, is that what you're talking about, is talking about specific trails?
I
or
was
signs.
more talking about,
signs on the specific trails?
and so you would like to know which trail these signs are on specifically?
Mhm.
Sure. And
Yeah.
they're sprinkled around through the system, but staff could give you a background, this is a hiking trail. So we have the hiking sign, or this is a, biking only sign.
I would like to know the name of the trail if you're going to show us pictures of things that are working or not working.
So we are working on a full inventory of like every single sign we have in the system. That's going to take us through the summer season to do, because there's a lot of trails and a lot of signs out there. We can certainly give you the examples now, the different types of signs that we have. But if you want specific trail names, that's going to take us a season to get out and inventory every single one.
But we're going to be looking at pretty much the whole menu of our trail system and kind of try to see where maybe input or improvement is needed and where it's fine, it's working fine. So it wouldn't be a specific, we're not going to be talking about a specific trail. We can talk about all the trails, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But if some are worse than others, shouldn't that be where we work on first?
Well, that's what we need to inventory to be able to know
Right.
which ones are in either dire need, lacking signage, or broken signs or missing signs, that sort of thing. Confusing signs, all of that. I will say the initial feedback, or some feedback that we got from council at a previous meeting, it seemed that the mayor was pleased that we were addressing some of just the hodgepodge that exists on the trails. So I know that's a concern, just for, we tend to tack on new signs and add new things. And it's that sort of like clutter, which kind of goes to branding too. That doesn't really help the branding. So I think that's something too that we can address, and that is a specific feedback we've gotten from council. But if it works, we'll send you examples that we have, some best practices that we can find, give you a little bit of time to digest that, and we'll pick that up again in June with our discussion of trail loops, if that works, and we'll have some nice deep dives.
Nice.
Sounds great.
Okay, and if you have any other ideas in the meantime, feel free to reach out and let us know if there's any other things related to trails and signs that comes to you and want to make sure we capture.
I think just, and you alluded to it, but not just the Pitt County examples, but any lessons learned from their process, because we're trying to follow a similar path.
Sure.
You know what I do is, Ellie and I travel a lot and do a lot of biking and trail systems. I take photos of signs that I think are
Yeah.
kind of cool and send them to Ann or Scott. And yeah, and I think that sometimes it just gives us some ideas of what other people are doing, and it's free.
Totally helpful. Yeah,
and it's
appreciate
easy,
that.
yeah.
See those?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool ones are in Vernal. Yeah, oh, yeah.
I've been seeing those
Vernal,
signs.
and we saw, I'll keep you on my email list, on my text list.
I think it's standardizing and branding is important, but I also think being creative is as important. And I hope we do not lose sight of that opportunity because
Little like I just sent them one, I think last fall. It just says pass with class. I don't know where I saw that, but it was just so cool. Another one, it was ride like your kids are on this trail. Just little things like that I don't know if it would work for us, but I always take photos of it and send them to Scott, usually like 4 a.m. because I know it's gonna ding his phone.
he'll be
So,
up.
Yeah, he'll be up, looking for my texts.
Disturbed from Jeffrey.
Yeah.
My favorite one of yours
else
is.
on signs
nobody
for
kills
now?
spiders, comma.
Okay, sounds like we have a plan.
Yeah, thanks. This is helpful.
That list was great though.
Okay,
that you ca- I
okay.
thought staff, you did great coming up with those.
Yeah, that was great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Jeffrey,
What?
Council.
inform us.
Oh, yeah, Council, okay. Couple things. Congratulations to the 3 incumbents. But that said, it was,
You are on notice.
it was a tough decision. There was an amazing amount of, not everybody, but there was an amazing amount of cool people that applied. But one of the things that, I kind of looked at, and I think, a bunch of people asked that question, how many meetings have you attended, either virtually or in person? And often, and there again, I think COVID, a lot of time has kind of changed people's habits, but I think we need to encourage some of these candidates somehow or another to remain engaged. I mean, there's just some people with like amazing expertise. So that was kind of cool and
Yeah.
well done for the incumbents. We talked about grants, went through kind of the grants of what the town has applied for and some who have been awarded and some have not. And I would just encourage us to, just stay on that. There's a lot of free money out there and we should, keep on it. We talked about Stilson. We kind of were doing the, when we did, that was a stables development. There's just a bunch of land out there. And there was some serious pushback when they proposed it because we kind of, a lot of us were okay with what they're going to do. It's going to be a cool project, but we were just afraid that was going to be like a whole nother community after these 65 units are done. So we master planned that whole space. And so Stilson will probably be the only housing project that's there. But that said, BOSAC is going to have to just stay engaged about creating a trail system that will facilitate, that will accommodate these new residences down the road. But and I think the council's interest was having a trail system to get out to, to the Red Pig, to the Wellington Trail, to whatever, Liesel's Luge, but also to have it, because there's going to be people living there, also have a trail system that will be, comfortable for people to walk their dogs, kids on strollers and whatnot like that.
Like a new trail, like new.
Yeah, well, in other words, from Stilson to our trail system without,
20 feet.
pardon me?
Like 20 feet.
Well, no, if you go to the south, it will go all the way, it could go up towards Liesel's Luge and the
Mhm.
Wellington Trail. So yeah, there's just,
Yeah, what our housing folks are proposing right now and working with a developer is a there are these kind of bioswales in the backyards of properties where they butt up against the Stilson and kind of Public Works yard. There's going to be about a 30-foot corridor in there with part of the bioswale, and then they would like a trail through that kind of runs along the backside. And then it would be on us at some point to construct it to connect up to the Wellington Trail under the power line. And then I think Jeffrey had the comment they took to heart, which was to develop a poop loop with stations. And so I think there's going to be just a kind of a self-contained, starting in the neighborhood, going back into the neighborhood, just a little loop through there. And then the rec path is expected to extend from kind of the bus stop on Wellington Road all the way up past to the bike park. So just having a little rec path in there. So really trying to make it accessible to folks.
And one thing which we covered a little bit about the horses on McCain and Public Works. And again, I think it was well done from this board. You know, I think Chris kind of drew a line in the sand. I say, we're not really crazy having an open space, and we're still able to accommodate the horse people for a year without having it on our open space. And that's something, is some concerns, because you talk about duty free. Those things are like, yeah, that's just not, it's not like a Chihuahua at all. So that's about it. That's all I have.
Thanks, Jeff.
Anything upcoming that you need?
Well, we're talking about banning concealed carry in public buildings. So,
Good.
yeah, so.
And Jeffrey, you're talking about potentially increasing BOSEC at your retreat, is that?
Yeah, you know, yeah, I think they're gonna be talking about it, about that, and you know, I kind of gave my opinion on it, and I talked to, I think, almost all of you, or most of you, and staff off the record, and kind of, yeah, so we are gonna be talking about it. I personally, I'm not in favor of it. I think this is, God knows, this meeting was confusing enough for me, rather than having another person up here. But you know, well, it depends what the council, I think the council is divided on it, for sure.
When's your retreat? The
The 16th,
of May?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Where are you going?
like Beaver Run or something. Yeah, yeah.
You're gonna get there.
Yeah, it's gonna be luxurious. Yeah, they,
Built in the 70s.
yeah.
It still looks it.
Yeah, I'm gonna spend the night.
Okay, thanks, Jeffrey. Other matters? Anybody have any?
I'm gonna beat the dead horse. I think just the snow's melting, and my God, it's amazing the amount of dog waste around. I just went around Vista Point, and unfortunately, a lot of it is kind of wet. So I'm glad we didn't do duty free today, but yeah. It's just,
Did you see the article in the Summit Daily about the environmental impact of dog waste?
no.
There, it was last week, maybe.
Wow.
But it's not just whether or not it ends up in the streams. It also causes non-native plants to take over
Oh, wow.
from native
Wow.
plants.
cool.
So
Yeah.
it's,
You did
it's,
that video you did with Ann.
With Ann,
Yeah,
with
that
my
was
poem,
great.
my poem I
Ann
wrote, yeah,
talked about that.
yeah, and yeah, it's an original poem.
Pull it out of the archives. Yeah.
That was actually really good, Jeffrey. Instagram.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, perfect.
And be like, what is this Instagram page? It's all about poop.
I was asked the other day, anything changing with the Illinois Creek Trail closure? The one over by,
Still waiting for, I guess, any feedback from the county if there's any movement there, but as of right now, the trail remains closed, and we've tried to find a way around it, and it's just really difficult.
what?
Oh,
Dave?
that
Yeah,
might be, yeah.
litigation. Yeah, okay. Any sense of the timeline on that? Probably slow.
Your friend Danny Theodore could probably give you some tips.
Was denied, right, though?
Yeah, but they're
Appealing?
suing,
No.
I believe.
Still in a holding pattern. Thank you.
Will you ask them if they'd open the trail? You just kind of speak to them for us? Okay.
Anything else?
No.
Anything else from staff?
No, just we will make sure we follow up with all of you on talking points for the open house and some best practices on signs. So look for those and yeah, that's about it.
Okay, here you go.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. All right, cool.
Excellent.
Hey, Zara.
Ready?
Thank you all.
We talk. Let me just slide over
He's
there.
ready for his tutorial.